Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly delighted to be here at Confluence organized by the G.D. Goenka School, and this is about empowering leaders of G.D. Goenka School. So it's a great privilege and an honor to be in the midst of all educationists. It's a great pleasure and honor to be in the midst of educationists. It's also critical to be in the midst of educationists because education is the bedrock on which countries grow and prosper. India is now a $4 trillion economy. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. And in another 3 years, we'll be the 3rd largest economy in the world. And by 2030, we'll go on to be a $10 trillion economy. And the base of this, on what we grow, the foundation of this will be laid by education. And that's why I thought I must come and interact with all of you, because it's important to understand that school education is the most critical in a country of 1.4 billion people, of a country which is the most populous country in the world. My own foundation has been laid by my school, and I've always believed that a school is made by the principal or the headmaster or the headmistress. I studied in modern school, and I had a great principal in a person called Mr. M.N. Kapoor, who believed that you have to give all-round education, and that the basic purpose of school is to make a student think. And while we all studied in that school, he felt that every student must participate in sports, must do extracurriculars, and actually must excel in one sport and one extracurricular. And I think that's the deep imprint which has had a huge impact on me. And I was truly glad that this G.D. Goenka University and schools have great swimming pools, great rifle shooting areas. There's a focus on cultural programs. All this actually creates all-round personality. And all-round personality, if you look at students who've done very well in outstanding, who've been toppers, and those who've excelled in sports and education, you'll find that students who've excelled in life later on are those who've also focused on extracurriculars and who focused on sports. So I'm a great believer in all-round education and not merely on being outstanding at only studies. But it's important that to understand that by 2030, India's working age population will peak at about 70% of the total population, And this will be the highest amongst all the major economies of the world. And actually, India will be the leading global source of human resources. And almost 30% of the additional global workforce in the coming decade will be from India. So if India is to supply almost 30% of the global workforce of the world, by about 2030, 35, you'll see Western countries will not have the manpower there will be no workforce, and all the workforce will be provided by India. So 30% of the workforce to the rest of the world will be provided by India. And this is very important, because it's also important to understand that our productivity level of India is still low. It's still low at 49% when you compare it with USA or China. USA is at about 70%, and UK is 78%, China is 66%. Our productivity level is still 50%. So how do you increase the productivity level of India's workforce is very critical. So, and I think, to my mind, implementing education to raise productivity of India, it's important to raise the educational standards, to bring in educational reforms, to bring in quality, integrity and equity across the system, focus on early childhood. And I'm a great believer that early childhood education is very important, because the mind of a child really grows between the age of about 18 months to 3.5 to 4 years. So if you are not able to do early childhood education between 18 months to 4 years, it becomes very difficult to educate children on a later date and make the brain grow. So early childhood education is very important. And so what the government has tried to do is to transform the education system in recent times. And what are these challenges? What we've seen in India's education system is a huge success in ensuring that students are able to go to schools. We've achieved huge success, and if you look at it, between 1990 and 2015, India invested heavily in schools. We were able to give access of education and enrollment. We built schools. In 25 years, we built close to about 7 lakh new schools, and we added 45 lakh new teachers to the school system. So across the country, we were able to build schools. We were able to provide education to every child. We focused in schools. We focused on teachers. But the important point is that merely opening schools or merely making building is not important. It's very important to understand this, that merely opening schools and providing teachers is not important, because while we opened schools, we opened and we ensured that every child in India is able to go to a school, it did not lead to increase in learning. So what had happened was that if you look at various national and international and third-party surveys which were conducted, which point to a very low and even declining level of learning outcomes. So while a child is able to go to class 5, he's not able to speak his mother tongue in class 2. He's not able to solve maths of class 2. And what is happening in India is that you will see that 10 to 15% of the students are able to absorb class 2, their mother tongue, their maths, their physics, 15%. The balanced students are not able to absorb. And then you put them in class 3, you put them in class 4, you put them in class 5, and once they are not able to absorb that, you will keep passing them, and the learning outcomes will be extremely poor. And therefore, there have been various reports which say, you look at the ASER report by Pratham, which shows that learning outcomes in rural India have actually declined very sharply. And the proportion of children in class 5, the children in class 5 who can read a class 2 level text, fell from about 51% to 41%. So in about 10 years' time, while we provided education to everybody, the learning outcomes of students in class 5 came down. They could not even read class 2 level text. It came down from 51% to 41%. And the proportion of children in class 5 who could do division exercise, simple exercise, like divide 8 by 2 and you get 4, division exercise fell from about close to 34% to 21%. So, government-owned survey, look at the National Achievement Survey, what is known as the NAS survey. The data for class 5 has shown that there has been a decline varying from 6% to 33% decrease in learning levels and for maths and languages. So there's been a huge fall in learning outcomes in children. And once you have learning level decline, you'll find that people will find it very difficult to get jobs. They'll find it very difficult to get good quality jobs. And that has been the challenge for Indian education, to my mind. So many of you who are teachers, who are principals, who are running schools, it's very important to understand that every child in the class must learn, and learn means that he should be able to imbibe in class 2. If he is not able to imbibe in class 2, he'll find it very difficult to absorb that in class 3 or class 4 or class 5. And since many of you are teachers, it's very important that at the foundation level, preschool education is very important, because the brain grows between 18 years to 4 years. And then in class 1, class 2 are very important. If they are able to learn, then subsequent education will become very easy. And I'm saying this because while we are growing to be a $5 trillion economy, we will be the third largest economy in the world. It's important to understand what is happening. At international level, India participated in the 2009 round of the Program for International Student Assessment, which is the PISA. It's known as the PISA, where every school from across the world comes and gives a test. And, while I'm a great believer in the India story, I'm a great believer that without school education, India can't grow. And when we gave the PISA in 2009 and 2010, India came second last among 74 countries. So we came second last among 74 countries, and this really shows that how important and how critical is school education. Because if you are creating a country of children where learning outcomes are not being absorbed, if we are not able to absorb, that means the child is not able to think. A child is not able to solve he's not able to speak basic mother tongue, he's not able to do basic maths, he'll find it very difficult to grow later in his life. And therefore, it is very clear that there's a de-link between education. We are putting money in education, but the learning outcomes has fallen. So we put money in buildings, we put money in teachers, the quality of teaching is very poor, and we are not able to improve learning outcomes. And it is clear that school education is actually the best way to improve learning outcomes. And therefore, the present government policy is to improve learning outcomes and ensure that all children fulfill their potential through education. And actually, if you look at it, in the next 10 to 12 years, the children currently enrolled in primary school will all enter the workforce. They will all enter the workforce. And it is very essential to invest in the education of the working age population now, to guarantee that the greatest number of them actually contribute to India's emergence as a leading global economy. Because the children you are educating now will be entering the workforce, and they will drive India's growth story of the future. So how India does in science, how India does in technology, how India does in startups, how India does disruption and using data in artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that is a function of the primary school that from where children come out. So that is why primary school education is very critical. And that is why the first education policy of the 21st century, that is the new education policy, addresses some of these key issues. And the new education policy is focused on this. And it envisions a very new 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 years curriculum and pedagogical framework catering to students in ages which ranges from 3 years to 8 years, from 8 years to 11 years, from 11 years to 14 years, and 14 years to 18 years. Because this is, to my mind, very important. Pedagogical framework catering to students of different ages. And this will enable students to attain very strong foundational capabilities. And once you gain strong foundational capabilities, in later years, you'll be able to develop higher order, very cognitive capabilities such as critical thinking. You know, when I said that the purpose of education is to be able to make a student think. If a student is not able to think on a later date, he will not be able to do anything. And therefore, the basic function of education is, I was lucky, I went to a school where my principal taught us to think. And because I was able to think, I could do new things later in life. I could make Kerala as God's own country, or I could do Incredible India, or I could do Make in India, or I could do Startup India, or I could run G20 and get a consensus of all the leading countries of the world, because my school education and my teachers taught me how to think. If they had not taught me how to think, I would not have been able to do it. And therefore, you know, I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career. I mean, I'd fought with the government in Kerala, communist government in Kerala, and for 10 months I was without a posting. And after that, 10 months later, as a punishment posting, they posted me as Secretary Tourism. But because my school education was very strong, I had the ability to create Kerala as a great destination for Ayurveda, for backwaters, went back to the roots of Kerala and developed it as one of the 10 exotic paradises of the world. And I lay the credit to my teachers in my school. And later at the peak, you know, when I was Secretary Tourism, Mr. Vajpayee, who was the Prime Minister, came there and saw how we had developed backwater, how we had developed Ayurveda. And after 1.5 years, they asked me to come to Government of India, and I was supposed to go to Finance Ministry, but the Prime Minister intervened and saw that I came back to Tourism Ministry. And in Government of India, and the Twin Tower blast happened, there was attack on Parliament, there was travel advisories against India, there was a huge crisis. And huge crisis, there was 10% occupancy in our hotels. And at the peak of the crisis, when every country had stopped promoting and marketing tourism, we launched the Incredible India campaign. And the Incredible India campaign led to creation of a huge demand. And that led to the creation of new properties. We took the occupancy to 100%. It led to the creation of new airports in Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Bangalore, Hyderabad. So, crisis brought out the best. And what my school education had enabled me to do was to think, confront a crisis, handle it creatively, and build a new aspect of India's development, which was tourism. And that was all. I lay credit to all that I'd learned in my school. And therefore, my belief is that school education is the foundation which creates great leaders. And therefore, this new education system will enable students to attain strong foundational capabilities and later years develop very high cognitive capability. In the new education policy, we place very high priority on foundational learning. You know, foundation literacy and numeracy for all children is critical. And therefore, focus is not only on enrollment in primary schools, but it has become absolutely necessary for India to improve learning outcomes and to provide quality foundational education, which I'm really glad that this GD Goenka schools are doing. I'm truly glad that it is laying focus on extracurricular activities, it is laying focus on sports, it is laying focus on art, and this is very important. And that is why in July 2021, Government of India launched the Nipun scheme. And what is the Nipun scheme? It said National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding of Numeracy. This was a mission to ensure that all students in India acquire foundational numeracy and literacy school. Because you getting into class 4, class 5 without understanding basic maths, without understanding basic education, and without being able to speak your mother tongue. And that is why all states in India were asked to focus on foundational learning. And this has led to a huge improvement now in learning outcomes. When we did the G20 in India, we had this challenge. G20 was important because G20 countries actually account for 85% of the global GDP. They account for about 80% of the global trade. Now, G20, India did it very differently. While all countries do it in one city or two cities, India did it across all states. We did it across close to about 100 cities. We used that opportunity to improve every single city. And every single city in terms of its drainage, sewage, solid waste. And we made it a people's movement. But more important is that we were able to get all the countries to come around to a consensus on all key issues confronting the world. This was the first time that on about 83 paras, we had 100% consensus. And that was India's biggest achievement. 100% consensus on all issues of growth, of development, even on Russia, Ukraine, we got a consensus. So that was India's achievement. And to my mind, one of the key issues of G20 was the global emphasis on foundational learning. During India's G20, if you read the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration, it focuses on the importance of foundational skill as the primary building block of education and employment. And therefore, what it said is that if you have foundational learning and numeracy, you'll be able to get jobs, you'll get skills, and that will prepare India to capture 30 to 35% of the global market. I've just come from actually Europe. I traveled recently to Europe for a G20 meeting. And all countries in Europe, while our population is very young, our average age is 28. The average age in Europe is about 50, 55. These are all aging population. They're all getting old while India is getting young and will keep getting younger till 2047. And the advantage is that in these countries there's no working manpower. There's no manpower. And they all want skilled workers. So our education system has to prepare students with skills. And the skills of today are very different from the skills we needed in the past. Today's skills is about getting data scientists, it's about artificial intelligence, it's about machine learning, it's about skilled workers. And if we are able to produce skilled workers, it's about running resorts, it's about producing great skilled manpower for, all the hotel managers used to come from the Swiss institutes from Lausanne earlier. Now if you go and see Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton hotels, all general managers are from India. So all future leaders in the world will come from India if we are able to push our education system. And therefore, one of the key things for our education system will be our ability to leverage technology. It will emerge will be very critical for us to grow by using technology. When I was growing up, there were no options. Either you joined the private sector or you joined the government. There was no option to being a great startup. There was no opportunity to disrupt the system by being a startup. When we started the Startup India movement in 2016, there were only 156 startups in India. Today, there are 110,000 startups. There are about 120 unicorns. Now, young children are getting in, they are disrupting the system, they are taking India forward. And as a part of that startups, there's no startup in the world which has not failed before succeeding. So parents, teachers all must get used to failures also, because a failure will lead to greater success. And therefore, technology will become the key driver in the years to come. And if what we are seeing today is there are several initiatives like the PM Pradhan Mantri E-Vidya, there's Diksha. What does Diksha do? It puts out the best tutorials. I was doing the aspirational district program, I was visiting villages in Nagaland, in Mizoram, in many of the villages of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. They were using the best tutorials from Diksha. And you could put it in the local mother tongue of that school and benefit from that. So what does Diksha and all these PM, E-Vidya, all of them do is to support teaching and learning. We've used technology to push this. And many of you will be delighted that actually PM E-Vidya has done very well, and it has won the UNESCO prize for use of technology in education. So that's a very big movement. And now what we are doing, it's not a question of just student passing or failing. It's a question of checking out his competency. It's a question of checking up learning outcomes, which will be very critical. And several of these schemes, and initiatives such as Samagra Shiksha, PM School for raising, the PM Shri and STARS are all aimed to improve the quality of teachers. I'm saying this because my view is that teachers make students. Teachers are the most critical component in any school education system. My school was a great school because I had the best teachers. And therefore, the teachers also must constantly evolve. They must also constantly learn. They must also progress to be able to produce great students of tomorrow. And therefore, they must be able to elevate their own quality of education, of classroom instruction, to ensure that there is better attainment of learning, there are better outcomes through teachers' training, through digital pedagogy, and they are pushing the limits. And therefore, many of you are teachers, you also need to constantly evolve through use of digital technology. I have one more point, and that is my belief always has been that we need to align school education with higher education. And I'm glad that GD Goenka School has a school, also as a university here. We need to align school education with higher education. And we need to build up industry partnerships, because current school students must become active. School students must become active contributors to India's economy. They should be equipped with necessary skills for a very dynamic workforce of tomorrow. The workforce will be very dynamic. You'll need startups need great product developers. We don't have product developers in this country. There's a huge shortage. We need 1 lakh, close to 1 lakh product developers. India is not getting them. And therefore, we need to constantly evolve our curriculum for that. And therefore, India's educational journey really stands at the cusp of a very unprecedented, very, very unprecedented transformation. Education must not only be an instrument of knowledge, but it should be also an enabler of economic growth for India, because if India is to become the third largest economy, then education will be the key driver. The primary education will be the key driver of this economic growth. So I'm truly delighted that I came to this GD Goenka Confluence. It talks about leaders of GD Goenka School, talks about leadership. And I've always believed that India needs great leaders. And for leaders to be produced, it's very important that we should not think of today, but think of 15 to 20 years later. How do we want to shape the India of tomorrow by thinking 15 to 20 years later? Where do we want to take our country? And therefore, teachers have to lay the foundation of students to think 20 years later. Secondly, we'll always have ups and downs on a daily basis. But students and teachers must always be eternal optimists. If they have optimism, students will be optimists. We'll always be optimists of the future. And thirdly, it's very important that, there will be challenges. There will be many challenges as we come across. There'll be crises. But a true leader is one who's able to always inspire others to follow. Their words and action really inspire students, and therefore teachers are great leaders. Teachers are great leaders because they inspire their students to think ahead. And lastly, I'm a great believer that a great leader always surrounds himself with a very competent, very good team. So always ensure that your students become your team. They are very competent, they are very able, they are capable of thinking. And if your students are great thinkers, if your students are great competent students, then your school and in turn your India will be a great team for the future. That will really transform India. So my belief is that primary school really is transformational. Primary education will transform India. Learning outcomes, focusing on skills for students, and having great teachers. My own example is one where I have greatly benefited from my school and from my teachers, and I really think that my school taught me to think and enabled me to do many things which I would not have been able to do ever in my life. And therefore, every student must be able to think, must be able to improve his learning outcome, and that will be only possible if we spring thousands and thousands of G.D. Goenka schools across the country. I wish G.D. Goenka schools all the best, and this is a unique cause of primary school education. As I said, if India is to become a great country, we need skilled manpower, and nobody can do it better than the G.D. Goenka schools. I wish all of you all the best and a great future. Thank you very much.
We are immensely grateful to you, sir, for your brilliant acumen and your extraordinary eloquence. Your words didn't merely inform, they ignited a blaze of curiosity and inspiration within each listener, leaving an enduring impression that will undoubtedly shape future discourse. And sir, we are sure your school is extremely proud of you as an alumnus, and that was such a wonderful honor for them. And sir, may we now have a short question-answer session with you, please? Thank you, sir. So we invite questions from the audience for sir. Ma'am, could you give the mic, please?
Namaskar, sir. I'm Dr. Neha Sharma, Principal G.D. Goenka, Ghaziabad. And before I ask my question, I'm really thankful that you mentioned about Diksha. Me and my team, we have been a proud contributor to Diksha, and we have contributed lesson plans and graphic novels to it. And my question to you, sir, is the G20 emphasizes the importance of international cooperation. And what steps should school take to promote global perspective and cultural understanding among students, preparing them to be responsible global citizens in the line of G20 objectives?
So, I mentioned that G20 is a very important forum. You get an opportunity to host G20 once in 20 years. And now with African Union included, We've also included African Union. That means G20 actually becomes G21 now. India has made it possible for G20 to become far more inclusive with G21. So G20 will now have almost 90% of the GDP. But, you know, sometimes our students keep thinking of what is happening in India. You know, that there are challenges, there are risks, there are many other things, but it's important to think of the world, what is happening. It's important to understand that 1/3 of the world is in recession. It's important to understand that 75 countries of the world are facing a global debt crisis. It's important to understand that the Sustainable Development Goals relating to health, education, nutrition, which are supposed to be achieved by 2030, the world is way behind schedule. Only 12% of the 169 SDGs are on track. And we must understand the challenges of climate action, because if we are not able to reach 1.5 degree by 2030, by 2050, the Earth may survive, but we as human beings will all go extinct. I mean, civilizations have been lost because of all this. And therefore, we need to keep climate action. It has to be the centerfold of everything that we do. And also that to be able to do this, the world needs resources. And the multilateral institutions like World Bank, which were formed in post-World War II, in the post-Bretton Woods period, are today outdated. You need to reform them. And also that one of our key priorities was that 50% of the population in the world is women, and women-led development became the centerfold of our G20. That is, you have to bring in gender equality, drive gender growth, ensure that we are able to have women in leadership position. All this became our priorities, and we were able to drive the world based on these priorities, and we were able to bring consensus across the world. So our students need to know about all this. They need to know about climate action. They need to know about SDGs. They need to know about what is happening around the world. You can't keep their eyes and ears closed. We are in a highly interconnected world. We've used technology to leapfrog. It's important to understand what India has done. We've given identity to every Indian. We've ensured that every Indian has a bank account. In 2015, when we started opening bank accounts, only 18% of the women had bank accounts. Today, 96% of the women have bank accounts. We do 11, and because we were able to link identity and mobile number with our bank accounts, we do 48% of the real-time payments in the world. We do 11x more payment than Europe and America. We do 5x more than China. All this, our children must know. And that is why G20 was important.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your enlightening words.
We'll take one more question for sir, please.
Hello, good morning, sir. My name is Sartaj, and I'm principal in one of the GD Goenka schools. My school is in Baramulla, J&K. It was wonderful listening to you and an enriching experience. When we talk about the modern workforce and we becoming a young power for the world, and in particular skill development, we generally see that our curriculum and the books which are in NCERT does not link to and do not give space to such kind of skills which are, maybe we have a multi-dimensional, every school has a multi-dimensional class, and we can have average, below average, and above average students. There are skills beyond robotics and machine learning like pottery, mechanics, and all that. May I request you to elaborate a bit so that we can get a know-how or a kind of an understanding? Should we lay importance to basic skills also, so that all those who are below average in a class can be channelized into something which will later enrich and equip them to become a potential workforce? Thank you.
So I think it's a very important question, and I'm really glad that you're coming from Baramulla, because Baramulla is one of our aspirational districts, which has done very well in the aspirational district program. If you ever take a trip of teachers to one of your GD Goenka schools, take them to Baramulla, because it's a district which has done very well. So the important point you're talking is about preparing students for tomorrow. That, to my mind, there are three things which a principal should do. One is, ensure that every student is able to play sports. I mean, no NCERT curriculum will teach you that, but make students play sports. Ask every student to excel in one game, whether it's tennis, whether it's badminton, whether it's football, whether it's cricket. Make a student excel. Say that you will be a champion in one area. Make everyone do extracurriculars. I mean, from photography to arts to carpentry to engineering to aero modeling, there are thousands and thousands of extracurriculars. Make a student excel in one extracurricular. That extracurricular and that sport will become a part of his life for the rest of his life. And that will actually shape his personality for the future. That's my belief, that extracurricular and sports are very critical in addition to NCERT curriculum. Now, NCERT curriculum itself is constantly evolving. It's evolving, it's changing. NCERT books are constantly changing. And that is something which the NCERT does on a constant basis. But important thing is that as students pass out, you would have imbibed in them, if you are able to push for learning outcomes, you would have imbibed in them a great aspiration to push for new things in life. And what the world is moving for is new areas of machine learning, product development, artificial intelligence, data scientists. They would have learned that they'll get into higher education in one of these areas and do very well in life. So I think it's not, the curriculum will change, but the principal's job is to challenge the student to have new interests in life, and that's very important. So thank you.